A D.C. judge has rejected former President Donald Trump's claim of immunity in a lawsuit filed by the estate of Brian Sicknick, the Capitol Police officer who died the day after being assaulted on January 6 by supporters of President Trump. Now, U.S. District Judge Amit P. Mehta rejected the former president's arguments in his 12-page memorandum opinion, an order obtained by Law and Crime. So let's go through it. He wrote, the court first addresses and quickly disposes of former President Trump's assertion of immunity from suit. Pretty simple. Now, Trump's lawyers filed this motion to dismiss based on something called absolute immunity. So it basically claims that his actions at the rally on January 6th, the Stop the Steal rally, were part of his role as then U.S. president, and therefore absolute immunity applies. Now, absolute immunity isn't necessarily absolute. I'll explain that later. But basically, you say, well, I mean, I was at the Stop the Steal rally as in my official capacity as president doing my job. No, that's no. The judge shouldn't buy that argument, and it's a good thing because, look, the president should not have carte blanche to do whatever he wants without any accountability and then claim that it's part of his job to do that. No, it's not. Look, he's made the same argument in similar lawsuits. Those have been rejected as well, but it hasn't stopped him from using it. Now, in her lawsuit, longtime domestic partner to Brian Sicknick, Sandra Garza, alleges that Trump's false and incendiary allegations of fraud and theft and his express calls for violence at the rally are responsible for the violent mob that went on to attack the U.S. Capitol. The lawsuit specifically points to two of the rioters who attacked Sicknick, causing the injuries that he later died from. Now, his death was attributed to a series of strokes that were incurred as a result of all that transpired the day before, according to the D.C. Medical Examiner's Office. So it wasn't the pepper spray, but again, it was a result of all the, everything that had happened that day, causing him to stroke out. Now, Julian Ellie Ketter had pepper sprayed Sicknick. He was sentenced to 6 years and 8 months in prison after pleading guilty to 2 counts of assault, resisting, or impeding officers using a dangerous weapon. The second man, George Tanyos, brought the can of pepper spray but did not use it. He pleaded to a pair of misdemeanors and was sentenced to time served. Garza's lawsuit argues that Trump is ultimately responsible for inciting that lawful behavior from those 2 rioters. Judge Mehta cited a previous case to support the decision to deny Trump's immunity claim. Now, that case happened in March of 2021, when Capitol Police officers James Blasingame and Sidney Hemby alleged that Trump had, quote, inflamed, encouraged, incited, directed, and aided and abetted his followers to assault police. The case is known as Blasingame, and it was cited by this and another lawsuit filed by Officer Conrad Smith and 7 of his colleagues. In that case, basically they knocked down the argument that Trump was speaking at the Stop the Steal rally as part of his official functions as president, which, if you think about it, it's kind of a ridiculous idea. Okay, thinking that that was his official job? No, it was more of a campaign event. Or at least you could make the comparison, right? It's analogous to a campaign event. It had nothing to do with his official presidential duties, okay? But he keeps trying to use it anyways, I mentioned. He's even gone so far as to try to use it in the defamation case filed by E. Jean Carroll, an event that happened before Trump was even president. Basically, Trump was found liable for sexual abuse for what happened in the 90s after assaulting her in a Bergdorf's. He then defamed her when she came forward when he was president of the United States. So now, of course, I get that the president generally enjoys absolute immunity when it comes to his job duties, even though it's not technically absolute. Now, the Supreme Court says in defending that, they need some sort of immunity to prevent politically BS lawsuits that would otherwise interfere with their ability to do their job from, again, taking up all their time to do their job. I get it. I get the need for something like that, but also note that the immunity is not 100% concrete. Okay, Clinton v. Jones, for example, in the 1990s, established that a sitting president of the United States has no immunity from civil law litigation in federal court for acts done before taking office and unrelated to the office. So that's very important. If it's not related to the office, then you don't have immunity. Period. Okay? Now, it also established that there is no temporary immunity and no delay of federal cases until the president leaves office. Now, in 2020's Trump v. Vance, SCOTUS also held that the president is subject to subpoenas in criminal prosecutions for personal conduct with the same legal threshold as anyone else. So basically, what that means is that under all of these precedents, Donald Trump is not immune from the cases against him. He is not immune, period. Then why use the argument? Well, look, I think it's a delay tactic. I think it's a way to draw out these cases until after the 2024 presidential election. Now, and then what? Okay, that's the question. And then what? Well, if he wins, that's where Project 2025 comes into play. Republicans plan to put the entire executive branch under the president's control, assuming, again, if a Republican wins. Now, that is a power grab, okay? Because it would include all the agencies like the DOJ and the FBI. So, very important because those could be used to go after Donald Trump's political enemies. Perhaps even those people who are suing him right now. You don't think he wouldn't? Oh, I think he would. I definitely beg to differ. I do not put this past him at all. He's a very petty and vindictive person. Which means if successful, you might have 2025 looking like the Revenge of the Sith. Okay? Something I would absolutely like to avoid. All right? I'm not a fan of a president becoming president to not only avoid prison, obviously, but also to go on a revenge tour. Because that's what that would undoubtedly look like. He's admitted as much. So, that said, so far, his immunity calls have failed. Great. So far, the system has held up and said, actually, you're not immune to this because it's not your official job duties. And so for now, I have some hope that he'll be held accountable for these things that he has incited. That said, I mean, we're really going to have to see what happens going forward if he does win not only the Republican nomination, but if he actually wins the presidency, what this means and what the role presidential immunity is going to mean in the future and for future U.S. presidents.